time to rebuild America.
Plane has crashed into one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center. You can see it now on the screen right there.
This country is different today.
Stop thinking of Peter Thiel as a venture capitalist. Start thinking of him as an architect. While the world watched his billions grow, Thiel was quietly bankrolling a network of techno-authoritarian to dismantle the very system that made him rich. From surveillance stones named after Lord of the Rings to the secret rise of J.D. Vance, Thiel isn't just betting on the future, he's buying it. This week on Enigma, we dive into the hidden empire of the man who says freedom and democracy are no longer compatible. The numbers are staggering, but most people don't connect the dots. Over $7 billion in personal wealth. Early investor in Facebook, turning $500,000 into billions. Co-founder of Palantir Technologies, named after the all-seeing stones in Tolkien's fantasy. A surveillance company with contracts worth billions from intelligence agencies and ICE. Funding for dozens of political candidates who promote nationalist views. And the PayPal Mafia, former employees who founded YouTube, LinkedIn, Yelp, and SpaceX. Because when you fund surveillance infrastructure, back politicians who question democratic norms, and write essays arguing that freedom and democracy are incompatible, you're not just investing, you're building something. When investigators look at Thiel's investments, they find something unusual. Companies that track people and sell data to law enforcement, political candidates who've questioned elections, think tanks advocating for restricting voting rights. It doesn't look like venture capital. It looks like infrastructure for a surveillance state. And it's all legal, all happening while Thiel speaks at private conferences about democracy's failure. Peter Andreas Thiel was born October 11th, 1967, in Frankfurt, West Germany. His family moved frequently: South Africa, Namibia, eventually Foster City, California. He attended Stanford, graduating with a philosophy degree in 1989, then Stanford Law in 1992. But Thiel never practiced law traditionally because Peter Thiel didn't want to work within systems. He wanted to tear down the old ones and replace them with his vision. In 1998, Thiel co-founded Confinity, which merged with Elon Musk's X.com to become PayPal. In 2002, eBay bought PayPal for $1.5 billion. Thiel's take was $55 million. But more important was the network. Elon Musk, Reid Hoffman, Max Levchin. The PayPal team would dominate Silicon Valley, and Thiel remained at the center, building what some call the Thiel Network, a constellation of loyalists who shared his skepticism of democratic governance. In 2004, Thiel gave Mark Zuckerberg $500,000 for 10.2% of Facebook. Most investors saw a college project. Thiel saw a platform that could map human relationships, track behavior, and accumulate data on a scale never before possible. When Facebook went public in 2012, Thiel's stake was worth over $1 billion. But the real value was data. Information about billions of people that could predict behavior, influence elections, control populations. But Facebook was just the beginning. In 2003, Thiel co-founded Palantir Technologies. The name comes from the seeing stones in Lord of the Rings. But in Tolkien's story, the Palantiri corrupted those who used them, allowing the Dark Lord Sauron to manipulate. The name wasn't just poetic, it was prophetic. Palantir was designed to analyze vast data and find patterns humans couldn't detect. Their first client was the CIA. After 9/11, they wanted technology to track terrorist networks. Palantir built software integrating facial recognition, financial transactions, communications, travel records. The technology worked too well. By 2010, Palantir had contracts with the FBI, NSA, and ICE. Human rights organizations documented that Palantir's software tracked and deported immigrants, separated families, identified people for raids based on algorithmic predictions. Palantir employees protested. Some resigned in tears, but the contracts continued because Palantir wasn't selling a product. It was selling capability, the ability to track anyone, anywhere. And Palantir works with private corporations, analyzing employee data, customer behavior. The same tools used to track terrorists track workers, predict labor organizing, identify troublemakers. Palantir is valued at over $40 billion, an empire built on surveillance. But the money is just a tool. What's revealing is Thiel's political philosophy. In 2009, he wrote an essay titled The Education of a Libertarian. In it, Thiel wrote, "I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible." He argued that expanding voting rights, particularly to women and welfare beneficiaries, had made it impossible to maintain a truly free society. The essay caused outrage, but the words were there, from a man who would fund political movements designed to restrict those very voting rights. In 2016, Thiel became one of Trump's most prominent Silicon Valley supporters. He spoke at the Republican National Convention. He donated $1.25 million. After Trump won, Thiel served on the transition team, selecting personnel. Critics noted that Palantir stood to benefit from a Trump administration expanding surveillance and immigration enforcement. And they were right. Palantir's contracts exploded under Trump. But Thiel's influence didn't stop there. In 2022, he backed J.D. Vance's Senate campaign in Ohio with over $15 million, one of the largest individual contributions to a Senate race in history. Vance wasn't just any candidate. He was a former Thiel Capital employee, a protege who had worked directly for Thiel, absorbed his views, and now carried them into electoral politics. Vance had transformed from Trump critic to Trump supporter, from moderate to nationalist, and with Thiel's money, he won. J.D. Vance now sits in the U.S. Senate, and his policy positions align almost perfectly with Thiel's publicly stated views. It wasn't just an investment, it was installation. Thiel also funded Blake Masters in his Arizona Senate campaign. Masters had worked for Thiel for years. His campaign promoted nationalist ideas, questioned the 2020 election, advocated for restricting immigration. Masters lost, but the pattern was unmistakable. Thiel was using wealth to fund candidates who shared his fundamental skepticism of democratic governance, not reforming democracy, questioning whether it should exist at all. But political funding is just one vector. Thiel also invested in media control. He secretly funded Hulk Hogan's lawsuit against Gawker Media. The case bankrupted Gawker, shutting it down. Thiel's stated motive was personal. Gawker had outed him as gay, but the implications went beyond revenge. A billionaire had used wealth to destroy a media company through the legal system, sending a message: write critically about the wealthy and they can destroy you through lawfare. Not through government censorship, through strategic litigation, which is perfectly legal. Thiel has funded the Federalist Society, instrumental in selecting federal judges, including Supreme Court justices. He created the Thiel Fellowship, which pays young people $100,000 to drop out of college and start companies. On the surface, it's about entrepreneurship, but look deeper. It's about creating a generation who owe their success to Thiel, who bypass institutions that might teach them to question authority, who believe individual genius matters more than democratic processes. All of these moves form a pattern. Thiel isn't just making bets. He's building an ecosystem designed to challenge and potentially replace democratic institutions. What that something else looks like is where it gets uncomfortable, because Thiel has told us. Thiel has spoken admiringly of Singapore's model, a one-party state with limited freedoms but high economic growth. He's praised authoritarian decision-making while criticizing democratic gridlock. In interviews, he's returned repeatedly to the idea that democracy has failed, that it's too slow, too susceptible to mob rule. He doesn't speak in abstractions. He speaks in specifics about how certain people should vote and others shouldn't. The network Thiel has funded shares similar views. They're techno-optimists who believe technology and markets solve problems better than democratic governance. Some have explicitly advocated for seasteading, creating independent city-states on floating platforms in international waters, outside any government's jurisdiction. These wouldn't be democracies. They'd be corporate entities where citizenship is purchased and governance is determined by wealth. The Thiel Foundation has funded seasteading research. The idea is radical. If you can't reform existing governments, you build new ones. It sounds like science fiction, but Thiel is spending real money because for him, it's not a fantasy, it's a long-term plan, an escape hatch for when democracy finally fails, as he believes it inevitably will. Then there's life extension. Thiel has invested heavily in radical life extension, parabiosis, using young blood to reverse aging, cryonics, brain uploading. On the surface, these seem like eccentric interests, but look deeper. If you believe democracy has failed and you want to build alternative systems, you need time. Extending life isn't about avoiding death. It's about maintaining power across generations, about becoming effectively immortal. In 2011, Thiel became a citizen of New Zealand, buying property there as a bolt hole in case of global instability. What makes his case unusual is how he got citizenship. New Zealand's government initially denied knowing about his application, which was processed unusually quickly without usual residency requirements. Documents revealed Thiel had been granted citizenship after meeting with officials and making investments. He bought his way in. It raised questions about whether the wealthy can purchase citizenship in stable countries and escape consequences of instability they may have helped create. Critics note the irony. Thiel criticizes democracy and government intervention, yet his fortune depends on government contracts through Palantir. His citizenship came through government favor. His investments are protected by government-enforced property rights. He wants all the benefits of democratic institutions without any obligations of democratic participation. He wants to live in a democracy while dismantling it for everyone else. Former employees describe a culture of intense loyalty, bordering on cultish. Thiel inspires deep devotion. But those who break with him or criticize him publicly often find themselves shut out of Silicon Valley networks, unable to raise funding, reputations damaged. One former associate described it as a soft blacklist, just a pattern where people who cross Thiel find opportunities mysteriously drying up. And then there's the question of what Thiel actually wants. Some analysts believe Thiel genuinely wants to create alternative governance structures. He believes we'll be freer than democracy. Others suggest something darker, that Thiel envisions a neo-feudal future where a technical elite, people like him, govern through superior knowledge and resources, while the masses are kept pacified through surveillance, algorithmic control, and carefully managed prosperity. A world where freedom exists for some and surveillance exists for everyone else. What's undeniable is that Thiel has resources to influence that future. His companies provide surveillance infrastructure. His political funding shapes elections and installs protégés in power. His media investments influence discourse and punish critics. His educational initiatives train the next generation in his philosophy. And his network occupies influential positions across technology and government. This isn't conspiracy. This is documented influence, legal and celebrated. Unlike many billionaires in their 70s or 80s, Thiel is only 57. He could be active for another 30 or 40 years, especially if life extension investments pay off. And the technologies he's investing in, AI that can predict behavior, surveillance systems tracking everyone, biotechnology that could extend life indefinitely, will only become more powerful. The question isn't whether Thiel will have influence. The question is how much influence one person should have over technologies and systems affecting billions who never voted for him and can't remove him from power. You will never meet the man who thinks democracy has failed. He moves in closed circles, speaks at private conferences to fellow billionaires and tech leaders, invests through networks most people never see. But his influence is everywhere. In surveillance systems, tracking immigrants and the workers. In senators, he funded who now vote on legislation. In technologies being developed to extend life. Upload consciousness. Build independent city-states beyond democratic control. Whether you see him as a visionary trying to save humanity, or a dangerous oligarch building techno-authoritarianism, depends entirely on whether you trust billionaires to decide the future for everyone else. Now check out our video on Silicon Valley's most dangerous ideas, or click this one instead.